above.
Let 'em in, let 'em in.
What we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
I wish that I could freely dream and be judged from within, haunted by a power that cannot see past my skin. My views are viewed as ignorant, my truth always denied. My history is shrouded in a spider web of lies. Isn't this America? Or is this America all a lie?
Of the freedom of speech, somewhere I read. Of the freedom of press, somewhere I read. That the greatness of America is the right to protest far right.
How can I pledge allegiance to?
Well, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. I'm your host, Larry Ellison. In studio with my brother. Yes, the doctor is back.
I'm back.
As they say, he's back. Yeah. Dr. Bradley is back. Good morning, sir. You
trying to get myself adjusted here.
We've only rent this space. I hope you brought your checkbook.
Well, you know, no, my wife has it.
Oh, don't spend that check until it clears. We worked very hard to get her that money.
I hear you.
And I'm sure she's gonna want to replace the furniture in the studio.
Oh, she's gonna want to replace. Oh, she doesn't want to replace me. I'm good.
Oh, there you go.
I'm good.
$6 million, man.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to be back, man. I had some father responsibilities I had to handle, man. Take my daughter down to university, down to Quinnipiac.
Yeah,
Quinnipiac.
That place. Usually when I can't pronounce it, I'd say something.
Well, QU.
Yeah, QU.
And it was a very nice.
QU too.
Yeah. We put the jokes this morning. But it was a very nice trip. And my wife went to the hotel room. I was like, baby, I was on guard duty all night, man. Now, you know how you go into those places and you're looking around, you're like,
yeah, we shouldn't be here.
We shouldn't be here. You know what I mean?
We've done
First of
too
all,
well. Right?
Not many look like us.
Right.
And number two, I'm looking around in the environment. I'm saying to my wife, baby, we can't afford something better than this. I mean, what am I doing? Well, we could, but I'm looking at the most. I was like, honey, this is not. I'm not comfortable. Mm-hmm. You know, I got you and I got my child here. Right. You know, I was on guard duty all night. I didn't sleep a wink, man.
Wow. You know, it's funny you said that because there's certain places that you go. That's like the Ritz-Carlton, and there's nothing else close by, right? So you're stuck with that. But if you have an option, that wouldn't be.
I mean, you know, it's bad when you pull up and you go into the main area. Yeah. The attendant says, don't park your car over there. Park it here.
Oh, wow.
I was like,
within eyesight, right?
We'll keep our eyes on it.
Oh, maybe we should just get back in our car.
Exactly. That's what I said. Maybe we should go to the other place. But it was a nice. We got an opportunity to talk to her about.
I'm glad you made it back. Okay.
Thank you,
you know, your presence is missed.
I appreciate
have to tell you by myself, by Pastor House, but also by our audience. People are like, where's Dr. Bradley? I said, well, you know, sometimes the doctor calls in sick too.
Very unusual, but it does. But that does happen, and you know, we all have things that we have to get done.
Oh, no doubt. Listen, family.
But I'm back.
Family commitment. I'm telling you. Well, like I said, it's good to see you. It says, what did you say? It's good to rather be seen than viewed.
But I do want to say thank you for your tolerance, man. You know what I mean? Because I didn't get a chance to contact you, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot to let Larry know that I won't be there.
Listen, this is a team effort. We are family, right? And we and that's the beauty. We have such good chemistry. We have good fun. We have a history. So it you know, we know these things pop up. Yeah. You know, I went through some things, and I had to take a little hiatus. Yeah. You know, family matters, and you and Denise pitched in and kept things going, and and you had took a little hiatus, and then I was here, and now we're back.
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly.
Like
the good old days.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
It's amazing how long this has been.
Oh
though.
my gosh, I tell you, we should be syndicated by now.
Yeah, we should.
But with that said, we want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company. For all your mortgage needs, give branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guaranteed Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston, Mass. Guaranteed Mortgage is located. Guaranteed Mortgage is guaranteed to exceed your expectations. With that, I want to say good morning, Pastor Hobbs. How are you, sir?
Good morning. By the grace of God, I am phenomenal.
Yeah, and again, I know you're still mourning the loss of your dad.
Yes.
So our prayers continue to be with you and the family during this very difficult time. I know it's not easy. Having experienced it myself. I don't care how old you get. You're losing a parent, and especially when you have a relationship with them. So let's say that. And while we have you, sir, if you wouldn't mind, prayer.
Absolutely. Father God, we do bless you. We honor you. We reverence you. We're thankful for this day that you've made, and we're going to rejoice and be glad. And then we ask you to bless this broadcast. Father, bless our city, bless our nation, bless our world. Be glorified in and through all that's said and done. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Yeah, amen.
We got so much to talk about, man. I don't know where to start.
Well, it's been a lot going on, and the sad part, Dr. Bradley, is I think we are stuck in neutral in a sense, and we continue to talk about a lot of the same issue because there's been very little, if any, movement on our end. And a lot of times people think throwing money at it is the answer to the problem, and that's what we're going to get right into. And if you want to give us a call here, the call-in number here is 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685. Again, you're listening to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. In this week's edition of the Bay State Banner, it says Mayor Wu proposes a $4.3 billion city budget. And when Dr. Bradley, you were looking at it, you said, is that with a B? $4.3 billion budget. So it says increased investment in schools, police, early education. And the irony was in that second one, investment in police, because there was this whole defund the police and cut back, and we don't need police here, we don't need police over. And during that whole time, right, people are finding, guess what? We do need the police. Mm-hmm. Do we need better oversight? Yes. And do we need accountability? Absolutely. But to say we don't, and then we saw a mass exodus of people, the conversation that just came up recently where, Dr. Bradley, people used to stay, and you probably remember this as well, when officers reached 65, they filed lawsuits saying it was age discrimination, right?
Stay on.
So they could stay on because the state police, which most people don't know, don't have a retirement age. They don't have a retirement age. When they merged with MDC, the registry, that was part of the agreement because some of those departments didn't have a retirement age.
Okay.
Well, because they didn't do much, some of them, so they could stay around longer when all you really do is patrol parks and pretty much when it was the MDC. So we're seeing people leaving earlier, and that gap is not being filled. Right now, depending on who you ask, the Boston police are short between 300 and 400 officers. Just imagine the strain, and then you have people leaving, and where this is the second time that I can recall that Boston had offered to laterals, with laterals meaning that they will allow you to come in from another police department if they vet you. And with that offer, I think they got 4 people who said we'll join the Boston Police Department. The fact that they're going through the list rapidly and the numbers aren't there. There's not an interest in law enforcement like it used to be. People should be alarmed because look around. We're fortunate here. We still see a lot of guns here in the city. But if you look around the country, there's a lawlessness where if you pull into people the wrong driveway to turn around, if you're playing basketball with your young 6-year-old and the ball rolls into your neighbor's yard, you're shot. If you're in a parking lot in Texas, 2 cheerleaders thinking they're getting in a friend's car and you're shot, it just goes on and on. We have more guns than we have people.
Yeah, well, that is our society. I would say, as a retired police officer, I personally think the defund the police conversation was taken out of context. Was taken. it got a political narrative. You know, I think that what we need to do in our society is actually be more careful about what we call the police on. We tend to do more than what we were actually created to do as in law enforcement. We have become the panacea to all societal problems.
De facto fall guys.
Yeah, and that, and people are saying, I don't want to be a part of that. And I think
That's a great point you bring up.
Yeah, I think we saw a significant drop in interest in policing after the George Floyd situation. People said, we were hearing that black people knew it all along. Right. We were victimized by it, but white folks didn't really take it seriously, and some will argue that they're still not taking it seriously, but until they actually saw it and they could not try to unsee what they had seen. So I think a problem that we have in our society is that we are calling police for absolutely everything. And we are not mental health specialists. We are not as police officers. We are law enforcement officers. And sometimes that law enforcement, that enforcement component of law enforcement may not look very good.
Well, to your point, because you bring up a very good one, is that we have reached past what we initially were designed to do, right, as far as enforcement. But at the end of the day, that is always a part of the equation of our thought process, is that we are an enforcement side of the government. And because we do so many other things, that when we have to put that hat on after we've assessed the situation, and so we've been driving the ice cream truck and we've been doing community service, but then there are times when that same person now has to enforce the laws, and people sometimes get confused. Well, you were just handing out ice cream, you were just working with my kids, and now you're kicking down the door. I don't like you anymore. Not understanding the dynamics of the role is that yes, we enjoy that, and that's part of what we do. But at the end of the day, that is not what we were hired to do.
Well, I agree with you. I think. See, the thing is that let's look at it this way: when we were kids, the enforcer of your family was not necessarily the most appreciative individual, the individual that you appreciated the most, you know, because you had to deal with dad, you had to deal with mom, who actually would tell you go outside and get a switch and I'm gonna spank you. Now that we're adults, who are the enforcers? It's law enforcement.
Right.
You see what I mean? So that same mentality, that same thought applies to law enforcement. You know, I'm not necessarily, so I like firemen.
Right.
But the guy who's coming in and telling me that, the law applies this way, and if you don't do it, we're going to have to take you out. Now that same, enforcement attitude is projected on that police officer.
You just had me thinking, because when you just said about, that enforcer, who was that enforcer in your house? That is what's missing, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because what you just said is so profound. That person now that the police and other that's what I said. You got me thinking, right? That I remember, because see, my mom didn't have to call the police because we had policing
in the home,
in our home. That has been removed, or replaced as non-existent. So now you have to call this 911 to come and do what parents sometimes can or won't do. And with the neighbors, there was an uncle, someone who mom would call. It was not the police. I know, because my dad was not involved in my life. My mom had some big burly brothers. All she had to do was say, "I'm calling Uncle so and so." I'm calling.
Things got straight real quick.
Absolutely.
But see, the point is that
that's a very good.
Yeah, the point is that if I'm really trying to destroy the very fabric, basic of society, that I attack the family. So if I'm actually if I have identified a particular segment of society that I want to destroy the future of that segment, I attack the unity of the family. So if I remove the enforcer, then the state becomes the enforcer. So when my uncles or my big sister or my cousins, my bigger cousins discipline me, they discipline me out of love. Out of correcting that behavior. But when the state disciplining you, it's not about love, dog. You know what I mean? It's not about correcting the behavior. It's about it's punitive.
Right.
More in more ways than one. And so I think what we're missing in our society is that family cohesion, where we are working as a village to make sure our youth understand that rules are there for a purpose, to be obeyed, and those rules that we call in society, we call them laws. That's how I see it.
Wow. Well, you see it clear. Dr. Bradley, we like I said, we got right into our conversation there, and we forgot I.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's right. How did we forget about this guy? We're sorry, brother. You know what I mean? We can make mistakes too. My brother William Bridgeforth.
Good morning, Brother Bridgeforth. Good morning to the town of Indiana. Good morning, Brother Jamal. Good morning, Brother Harry Scales and Mrs. Scales.
Yes,
good morning
yes,
to all our
yes.
avid listeners out there. Like I said, I want to thank you all for continuing to support the broadcast here. Like I said, we do this for you, but we couldn't do it without you. So, again, thank you. And it was amazing because when we take a break, I have to grab my phone out of it because that's what kind of, you have that constant reminder in your head, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, we skipped something here, right? We went from 1 to 10, right? Got
Yeah,
right
because
into
we got so much to talk about.
go exactly.
But I mean, I think, and I do say good morning to all those who are definitely avid listeners and miss me when I'm away, and I miss them when I'm away as well.
I have to tell you, because Pastor Wall sent me. He sent me a text from an unidentified viewer that was on the chat line, and he sent it to me because the guy was saying that this was his favorite broadcast, and that he really enjoys the MAMLEO broadcast on Saturday mornings and looks forward to it. And
thank you.
Like I said, you'd be surprised who listens, but they don't call.
You never know.
They don't call.
You never know who's listening. Like I said, I was actually eating with my bride. We were out to dinner, and the guy was like, "I recognize that voice." I was like, well, it has a country flavor.
You and Barry White.
That's right. Yeah, I gotta keep my country flavor, man, because that's where I'm from. That's who I am.
Yeah.
But that is the issue that we're dealing with as a people. Is that our youth have been, the family has been broken apart. This social engineering, starting back in the days that when we were kids, with the welfare system and so on and so forth. And what you end up getting is one parent, usually the mother, who's trying to play both roles. Yeah, and sometimes things just slips through the cracks, and so. And we end up, that child who's now recalcitrant or difficult to deal with is now facing the criminal justice system. And our criminal justice system is not necessarily fair to our people.
So we're going to dive into that a little bit more, but also this budget here. It says Mayor Wu proposes $4.3 billion city budget. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu last week announced her recommended nearly $4.3 billion with the B, Dr. Bradley, billion city budget for the city's fiscal year 2024. Excuse me. The budget recommendation represents a roughly $274 million or 7% increase from last year. A sign that Boston remains on physically sound footing despite the ongoing recovery from the COVID-19 and the absence of federal stimulus dollars that helped support the budget last year. Calling this budget for families a budget for families, the recommendations overall represent modest increased investments and priorities, Wu already identified and shaped during her first year as mayor, a point she herself acknowledged in an April 12 breakfast presentation for the city council members and other guests. We are looking to ensure that Boston is, of course, charting new ground and leading the way on all the major issues that we're working on. But this budget really is an intentional investment in getting back to basics, as well as Wu said, there are many things because... and turn to page
7, right?
Right. Yeah, apologize, folks. We are doing this in real time. Here we go. Of all the hands-on-deck emergency nature of last few years that didn't get as much attention. So we want to make sure that rather than just always announcing new things, and certainly there's some new great things here, the focus has always been to do well in making sure that work is sustainable for the workforce and undertaking that work. Among the larger increases Wu's proposal are those for housing and human services, streets, and arts and culture. The budget would also provide $451,000 to fund a new city planning department, part of Wu's long-standing goal of separating planning and development functions in the city, which until now have both been overseen by the BRA, the Boston Planning and Redevelopment Authority. Wu's proposal would also increase the Boston Police Department's budget, the city's largest line item after schools and a source of controversy in recent years, by about 1.5%, an increase of some $10 million. The mayor's budget recommendation marks just the first part of a budget process that will last into the summer, as the recommendation is taken up by the city council. Speaking after Wu, City Councilor Tania Fernandez Anderson, who represents Roxbury and chairs the City Council's Committee on Ways and Means, which oversees the budget process and will be holding public hearings into the summer, said now comes the hard part. With the budget moving to the City Council for debate, Fernandez Anderson said various interests will be lobbying for resources and will be up to the council to weigh those demands. The departments make recommendations for the budget, then the city councilors make recommendations, and the community makes recommendations. The balance of the three, I think, is going to rely heavily on the amendment process, and Fernandez Anderson, everyone's fighting for and representing their district. But in the end, there's only so much money to go around. She added, I look forward to transparency. I look forward to effective communication. I look forward to working with all of us as leaders. So I'm going to stop there for a second and digest a little bit of Dr. Bradley. She's saying there's not enough money to go around. $4.3 billion with a B. That's the GPA of many countries, right? Not just the city. Many countries don't have a $4.3 billion budget.
Yeah, I would argue that there are countries significantly less. The gross national product is pretty much less than 4.3 billion. One of the things that I'm not seeing here, and granted that this is my first time seeing this data, and I have not been having an opportunity to kind of dive into it and pull the onion layers back. One of the things that jumped out at me as just a layman individual looking at the data is that there's no money dedicated to youth employment over the summer.
Well, there's
is that something somewhere? Is
it's
it hidden
been
somewhere?
There's about 7,000 jobs, but believe it or not, and maybe even more than that. But last year, a lot of them went unfilled by young people who didn't even partake in it. So
and so the question will become: why is that the case? Is there are there needs? Is there a need for advertising or getting information out that the jobs are available, or is it target on just one particular community?
Here's what I'm hearing is that a lot of these kids are saying because they're not safe in certain neighborhoods, that if they have to cross over, like if you get a summer job, it may not be in your neighborhood. You may have to travel outside of your comfort zone. And a lot of these kids are terribly afraid of moving out of their neighborhood. They don't venture out of that area. If they live in a certain housing development, that's where they stay.
So why not bring the job to them? Why have the job?
Well,
go to the job.
That's true. But then there's only so many, right? If you have 7,000 jobs and you can't put all these kids in that one development, right? Some of them do work there, some of them, but a lot of times they're deserts, right?
I mean, but that speaks to a bigger problem, though. You know, if the child is afraid to move from one component of the, because this is a free country, you should be able to move wherever you want. No one owns it. So that's the first hit. Yeah. The second hit is that there's got to be a solution to that problem, and it should be, in my opinion, when I look at this, I'm saying it should be very clear that an extra amount of money is donated or being contributed to this particular social problem. Yeah. Crime tends to rise. We already know this in the summer when the weather is conducive to criminal activity. Yeah. And it's usually people our age. I'm almost 70. We don't commit crime. The community, the youth actually commits the crime. Right. So why not target the money to that community so you can actually reduce the crime by making sure that it's okay for them to move one way throughout the city? No, I don't get it.
I agree, and I attend these weekly meetings, and 99% of the conversation that we do on Friday has to do with our young people, and a lot of times it's conversation, it's meaningful for those who don't understand it in the dynamics of reality, that we throw money at these problems, and then what happens is when there is a new problem, we create a new bureaucracy that is supposed to address it, right?
Like federal government.
Exactly, right? And so clearly, if you have $4.3 billion to throw at a problem, money is not the problem. It's an increase of 200 and something $1 million from last year, right? So you have to ask yourself, because I know those of us who are as first responders, we haven't seen a pay raise. So it is our money is flatlined right now currently because of negotiations. But I say that because what are we increasing this money for? Right.
Well, I think one of the things that, if I were sitting in that seat, I would ask the question, what are the social dynamics that are creating the problem, and commit the money to solving those social dynamics?
Well, and a big chunk of that is, Dr. Bradley, but what are we getting and yielding for our reserves? So let me give you a perfect example, and I want to get your take on this. Out of that $4.3 billion, $1.3 billion to $1.4 billion is for the schools, for Boston Public Schools.
Okay, so what is that 1.4 billion? Let's go to the high
With
end.
a B, yeah.
With a B, doing to deal with the issues that are causing disruption of education in the school.
And that's where I want to get your take, because here we have, right? So we went from when I started working, for full disclosure, in the schools for the Boston Police Department, not as a teacher, but as a safety provider. There were 75,000 students in the Boston Public Schools alone. That number is hovering around 47,000. The budget has increased. From their own reporting and the state's reporting, that the education level has decreased. So you tell me, if this weren't taxpayer money and you were a company,
That'd be our business.
your company was showing no results, no profit, you go to the stockholders, and that's what the taxpayers are, the stockholders, and saying, we want more money to pour down the drain. You're never going to see any return on your investment. And people just, because see, this is why I always announce this, is that this is not the city's money. This is taxpayer money.
But if if the stockholders understand the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is to change the direction of the organization. Where I'm going with this is, if the citizens, our main component of the citizens are saying, we welcome the idea around gentrification, and the vehicle to usher in the gentrification that we desire is education and crime. And so we're going to allow certain things to happen until we can get to where we want to go with the shifting of the populace in the city. Because look at this. Think about this. The Boston Public School System has 3 exam schools. If I'm not mistaken,
3.
it has 3 of them, right? So at one point in the history of the city, the Boston Public School System had, all schools were equivalent to our exam school. You had kings and queens sending their kids to Boston to actually be educated in the city. So, so it's not that we can't do it. It's that I don't think there's the motivation to do it.
Again, you are on fire this morning with your analysis of things, right? I reflect back when I went to school with some of my siblings and friends during busing. I felt there was more learning going on during those tumultuous times than is taking place today. And they didn't have this kind of money to spend on schools, right? So where have we gone wrong? Because again, right now the city of Boston is still in jeopardy of the state taking over in a receivership of the Boston Public Schools.
$1.4 billion budget, and you're losing your school. I mean, come on, man.
But Dr. Bradley, money, again, it's not. That's what I'm saying. If money was a problem,
it wouldn't be.
It would be fixed, right? Because
I got you.
We keep increasing the budget. We
I
keep increasing how much we spend. But and again, I have to ask: are we asking and demanding to show results before we continue to pour money into a decrease in population?
Yeah, that's my point. You're right on target. Because why are we constantly going to the table, asking for more money? Where's the money going?
Where are the parents?
I don't see. The return on the investment is not very healthy here, Doc.
That's my point.
I don't see it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So where are we putting the money into the teacher? What is the quality of?
We have
of
less
the
teachers.
All right. So when you compare the Boston Public School System with a school system comparable to its size, in another jurisdiction,
right?
What are we getting in terms of that value? Do we see that the Boston Public School System is superior? We probably have a superior budget, but it doesn't have a superior quality.
Well, no, because we see places that have smaller budgets pass up the lines, right? And we see a better outcome. So let's see if our callers have they've seen the woken up this morning.
This is a sad commentary,
right? But this is when we need to continue to discuss. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Pastor Dan. Pastor Dan from Sound Travels, heard every Wednesday from 8 to 9 a.m. Good morning, sir. And Mom's Corner.
Yes, we all love Mom.
Yes, we do. We do. And let me tell you, what a blessing to still have one, I tell you.
Absolutely.
Yes,
you
sir.
know.
So, Dan, you've heard our opening here. You've heard us discussing, and I hope you want to weigh in. Let me just give you some more figures before you weigh in, Dan. So, their proposal is another $4 million in new funding for universal pre-kindergarten programs to add 350 new seats over 3 years. $43 million for new libraries in Fields Corner, Eggleston Square, and Common Square. $750,000 to expand weekly and Saturday hours at the public library. $18 million toward youth jobs, as Dr. Bradley was wondering where we're going to hire. $18 million for youth jobs, $500,000 for youth swim lessons, $178 million in new capital funding for construction and renovation of Boston centers for youth and families, $50 million for the Boston Housing Authority for modernization and renovation, working toward the goal of ending the use of fossil fuels in Boston public housing, and it goes on. So again, we're throwing more money at the problem to see what sticks, right? But we don't go in and as taxpayers in the city of Boston and demand what have been the results in these areas so far, right? Because I have to be brutally honest. Let's go to the libraries for 1 second, Dan, and I'm gonna let you weigh in. You know what? Like, most of the problems I hit with people with the library is young people coming in there and terrorizing and being disruptive, not reading, not going there to study. But actually causing problems in
For
the
those
main
who
life.
are,
Yeah, those who want to use it in its proper form.
Yeah.
So again, what are we spending this money on? Dan, maybe you have some solutions because
Well, the solutions are not all that earth-shaking. Dr. Bradley, I hope I probably agree on this. The solution starts in the home.
We do. We just talked about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard. The who is the enforcer? Who teaches the children that there's somebody bigger and badder? These children nowadays, so quote unquote, aren't afraid of anybody.
right.
There's just no whatsoever accountability. Everything has to go my way at my time, and if you touch me, I'll sue.
Yeah.
If you touch me, the other part of this, and it's a more sinister part, is this is how an empire dies. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. This is all of that money, and not one dime that I heard is going to be focused on getting the best educators in front of the students.
Well, even with the best educators, if the school is not free of crime or is not secured, there will be a lack of education. First of all, before we get going any farther, I'm glad you pointed out to me the $18 million dedicated towards youth jobs, because that disturbed me. So I'm glad to see that she was thinking about she thought about that.
And now, of course, somebody's using a lawnmower. My goodness, I can't win.
I think the problem is, and I think Dan touched on it, and we touched on it earlier, we have a problem in our community in particular.
We don't have a money problem.
No, we don't have a money problem.
No,
we have a discipline of our youth problem because, and I think that was actually calculated. I think, with human services and the things that were happening, because if I would discipline my child the way my father disciplined me, I would be locked up. But I grew up to be a police officer. I grew up to have a healthy respect for authority. We are not allowed to discipline our children in the way that, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm talking about making sure that the child understands there's consequences for your behavior.
Right. I don't know if Dan has got a bunch of bees chasing him.
As I said, as soon as I got out of the truck, somebody's on one of these big riding mowers right next to me. Hang on a second.
Okay. While we're doing that, Dan, I'm going to grab this other call. Good morning.
All right, I'm clear now.
Okay. All right. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the Dan. What's stand by? Good morning. Welcome to the roundtable, caller. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might not like my answer, but it builds back to what Malcolm X used to say, and I'm paraphrasing him now, only a fool will allow his oppressor to educate his kids. And that's how I feel with the Boston Public Schools. yes, there are consequences to actions, but yet the problem with that is, what kind of consequences are you talking about? Are there consequences to losing your job, losing your license? What's the deal? Because everybody can say there are consequences to actions, but what kind of consequences are you talking about?
Right. So let me just unpack what you said there, right? And I want to get Dr. Bradley and Dan's take on it. When you said that only a fool would allow, and I'm paraphrasing, the oppressor to educate their child. Well, I would say this. Now, there are towns, and I live in one, where my children are getting a great education, and not everyone looks like them. So I think I get the sentiments of that, and I think at the time it made sense. But I think in today, I can't paint everyone with the same brush, because in certain neighborhoods, we bus our kids out to schools outside of Boston, we intentionally to the Metco system, and we find those kids are getting an education by what some would label as the oppressors. So we're here in Boston. And people that look like them as well are in these classrooms, and there's not much learning going on. So I'm not sure if it's the individual or it's the system that is overwhelmed, and that it doesn't foster an environment for learning. Because I see it every day, and when you get to the point where those of us in law enforcement are no longer shocked at some of the behavior, we don't normalize it, but we're just not shocked because we see it on a regular basis and we become immune to it. I don't think it's so much the individuals as that. But stand by, Dan. I know you get back from your grass cutting there, so we'll let you finish it.
So the whole thing, it's not the education by our oppressors that's the issue. So what? We've been educated by people that didn't like us, and we turned it to our advantage. How many? I mean, if you know Dr. Bradley, I hope will back me up on this. The slave owners taught one person to read because it was a parlor trick. So they thought, look, we'll bring this person in. He's, obviously not as smart as us, but look how she reads. Well, she in turn taught everybody on the plantation. So being taught by our oppressors is not the issue and never has been. It's what do we do with what we're taught, and will somebody please answer the question, why aren't black celebrities standing up and saying to these black people who are killing these black people, what are you people doing?
Well, I don't, celebrity, I think it's more relevant that the parents in the community, because that did not, it only happens if you have immunity. Because I tell people, the same people that know they can pull the trigger in Roxbury knows that if they pull that trigger in West Roxbury, folks see it, they're going to report it because they don't want it. So it's really, that's how it was when I was growing up, and I lived in Roxbury growing up. These type of things didn't happen, and it was predominantly a neighborhood that was black, had turned, it used to be a Jewish community, and then it turned pretty much black, and then the neighborhood started mixing. We had, Hispanics moving in, and it was great, a mixture, but there was a sense of community regardless of your ethnicity, that everyone there saw it as a family. That started to break down. Crack couldn't help the neighborhood, but every adult was your parent. Now the adults are indulging in the problem, the big part of the problem.
But if I may, though, I think the problem is that I do agree with Dan in the sense that it's not really our oppressors educating us to the point where they have educated us to hate us. So when you educate a person to hate what they look like, who they are, then I don't have to worry about destroying you. You're going to destroy yourself
from the inside.
From the inside. Exactly. So I don't have to really worry about it.
So I want to get Dick's response to what I've said, what Dan said, and what Dr. Bradley has said.
Okay, your response is well put, but I have to push back a little bit.
No, this is a talk show.
Because remember, not all, the old saying goes, not all black people are my skin folk. Huh?
Not all skin folks ain't your kin folks, yeah.
And then remember, back in the days of the plantation, there were a lot of traders, sellouts, or you want to call them, that did turn their backs because of the love of massa. Let's be clear now.
Yeah.
They had a love of massa too, because it goes both ways, hate and love. That they turn on the slaves on the plantation, and even some of the slaves that was in the house. So.
No, I don't disagree with that, but I mean, you have that in every profession, and that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Is that
And with, how you take out your enemy, the best way is to get him to take himself out. So you sow seeds of discord. You create false enemies, like good and bad hair, light and dark skin. All of those things, all of that is the narrative. So it's done for a reason, but we're still not answering the question, why aren't black men with the black women?
Why aren't they with them?
I think
Is that what you're saying? I think it's rhetorical because a lot of us are. That doesn't get.
I think
It's funny. Let me just share this story with you guys real quick. So I work in a very small unit, and it is 100% people of color in my unit, in the school unit, in my unit that I work in. Let me just finish my thought here. So in that unit, there are approximately, I think there's six black males that work in our unit. All of us are married. All of us have children. All of us are fathers in the home. And I was just looking around the room one day, and I was just looking at it because everybody talks about absentee fathers, black men, right? And I'm saying to myself, wow, no one tells this story. No one tells this story. And I hear all the time in the office what we're doing with our children is during the week, home, just talking about family issues. And none of us have our kids in the Boston public school system because we see what's happening. But every day we come in and we leave everything on the floor trying to make it better for those families who aren't as fortunate as we are to be able to financially or literally navigate our way out of the system. Because that's the problem here, is that if you have a parent that has not educated themselves in the basics,
You got power.
basics, then you have a disruption in the home.
Yeah.
If I come home and like my wife, Dr. Bradley, you all are able to help your children with their learning. My wife and I are able to help our children with that. They don't have to just depend on their teacher who has 30 other kids in the classroom, even though we're in a good school system. So it's that village thing. But and before, if you didn't, somebody could, or they would step up. If they saw a void, they would try to fill it.
Right here.
That doesn't happen anymore. So Ditka, a $4.3 billion budget. Like I said, money is not the problem. And a big chunk of that, the schools are the largest cost in the city's budget. The largest cost in the city's budget. Only the second to that is the Boston Police Department. And that's because you can't forecast crime. Right? You can't forecast crime. So there are things that take place that you can assess that you're going to spend $1 billion, which is not what they spend. The Boston Police Department budget is nowhere near the school's budget. But one would say again, so how do we justify spending $1.3 billion and we keep getting the same results? Worse, actually, because according to the state's recent report, there's been no improvement since their threat to take over the schools.
Well, to answer your question, it's an easy one, but at the same time, it's going to be a little bit hard because the problem is both the single parent and parents in general don't think like they're stakeholders. They think more about being a parent. Also, when it comes to the budget, a lot of people, let's face it, they don't know a lot about that. Because when you think of $4.3 billion, that's a lot of money, and the number is so high that the parents, their heads might even explode with that because they don't think about how much what goes into the budget, how much is spent, how much is left over, the whole 9 yards. So you tell a parent, a single parent or a parent, that they'll look at you like, what are you talking about? Like, this is how much we spend, or like, wow.
Right. So Dan Ditka said, the single parent. My mom was a single parent, and this was not tolerated in my home. This type of behavior, calls from the teacher about my behavior, because she didn't send me there to be a disruptor. She sent me there to learn. So how do we wrap our mind? But we keep on increasing the budget. Like I said, this budget is over $250 million more than they said last year that they spent. And we're not seeing it. We're seeing crime on the rise. We're seeing the lack of education. So we're seeing a decrease in services, but an increase in the cost for them. How did the two conflate? Did we lose Dan?
I think so.
Okay, we lost Dan. I guess he had to finish cutting the grass. So, Dr. Bradley, Dicker, how do we wrap our mind around? What person? And this is where I say when people say, "Oh, the city," it's not the city's money. I tell people, when I ask them, name me one thing the city makes and sells.
Yeah.
They can't.
Well, I was going to say it, but I left it. I'm in a family church.
You're in a Christian church, right? So exactly, it comes. I just got my tax bills for my properties I own in the city of Boston, so I know where they're getting it from.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
A portion of it from, right? And I pay my fair share. Right? I don't live in the city, but I do derive income from my properties. Right? There's an investment. But I'm saying to myself, I just shake my head, and I'm like, when I'm writing those checks, it's like, wow. It would be nice if I saw an improvement, because I pay taxes in my town and I drive around and I see the investment in the schools. I see, it's a safe environment.
Well, let me ask you this question, though, Larry. Let me ask you this question, not to cut you off.
No.
What's happening in your town that's not happening in the Boston public
Great
school
question.
system? What happened in your town school system?
Great. My wife is on the parent teachers. She's actively involved because my schedule doesn't allow it as much as she. We're very blessed that she can be at home. My wife is a former teacher, not a former because I tell you always teaching. But when they have these committees, we are at all of them. We are present, and the place is packed. That is what I know where you're going. Absolutely, we're there. In Boston when they have them for security.
So what
there are
happened?
more of law enforcement and teachers than there are parents.
Okay, so what happened in I raised 5 kids. I have 5 adult kids. And in all 5 situations, my first wife and I, and my current wife and I, with the last 2 group of girls, were always at the events. We're always at the school. Always questioning about the quality of education. Always looking at how can we improve it.
Yeah.
All willing to actually come in and talk to students about careers that we pursued that in some cases work, in some cases that did not work, and try to share that broader holistic experience around what an education will bring you, the flexibility.
Yeah.
So what I think the difference here is, and this is just me speaking, is that the lack of parent participation is so evident that is a major problem in the Boston public school system.
It's an advantage,
and I don't see how money is going to change that.
That's my point.
I don't see how money is going to bring that forward. Resolve that situation.
Right.
Because without the parents, this is a joint venture. Educating our kids are a joint venture.
So
it's the school system and the parents.
So
together.
Ditka, to Dr. Bradley's point there, right? There's nothing in here because I think there should be some allocation for parental education, right? Educating parents, because if you put your child in the medical system, and someone there can correct me if I'm wrong, you are required to be involved in the school activity.
That's my understanding of it. Yeah.
Right. So why is that medical can require, but in Boston we can just throw the towels, and if you're a parent that doesn't want to be involved in your parents, involved in your child's development, that there is no consequences and no accountability. Just keep throwing money at it and expecting someone else to do a better job of raising your child than you are. So Dick, what solutions do you put on the table? Because money is not a problem. Like they said, Boston's in good shape financially. They're throwing money at schools. It's the most expensive, and some people say it's the most expensive daycare.
This is exactly what it is.
In
my experience, it's a daycare.
Dick, are you there?
I'm still here.
Yeah. So let's work on solutions these remaining moments. What if you're the mayor and you're proposing this $4.3 billion, and then it's almost laughable. I'm listening to Tanya Anderson, the city councilor, and saying, we got to fight. Like, there should be leftovers, right? This is a smorgasbord. This is a feast. And she's saying that this is not enough. We have to fight over this $4.3 billion budget.
She's insinuating that $4.3 billion is not enough.
She's saying, yeah. She said now it comes down to fighting. You mustn't hear when I read that part.
I was somplayce else.
Yeah, she said, yeah. So she said,
oh my God,
yeah,
that's comical.
yeah.
Oh man,
it is. She's quoted. Said, I think this is the balance of the three. I think is going to rely heavily on the amendment process, said Fernandez Anderson. Everyone's fighting for and representing their district, but there's only so much money to move around.
You're missing the point.
This is not Monopoly. This isn't play money.
Okay. All right, let me shut up.
So again, then you have to ask, because this is an election year. Dick. I know you were. This is an election. I know. I'm hearing that Frank Baker is not running for his district, so there's an open seat there. But you have to ask yourself: are the people who are currently on the city council, is the mayor of the city of Boston, are they adequately prepared to be the caretakers for this astronomical amount of money, $4.3 billion? Do we have the right stewards overseeing this money?
Short answer is no, because just like any other politician, when it comes to a lot of money that they get from.
But you say no, Dicker. How many of them you think will be reelected in the fall?
Every single one.
Okay, so right, because he's not running, right? So then I asked the question, Dr. Bradley and Dicker, who do we blame, them or the voters of City of Boston? Because I don't live in the city of Boston. I don't vote for these folks, right? I wouldn't vote for any of them, honestly. I think we need to bring in some new, experienced and proven talent to run this money. Like I said, would you give this kind of money to someone to invest your money and you don't know anything about them? I mean, this is just crazy. And then, like I said, and then you have smaller towns who would love to have this kind of money, and you see what they do with the little bit they have, and folks are willing to even go into their pockets when there's a shortfall because they see the money going to where it's supposed to go. And here we just keep seeing it going. It's like opening up the window and turning on the fan and just watching it go out. Am I painting a murky outcome here?
Well, in my mind, it's appearing it's murky.
It's bleak.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, you can't solve the problem. Again, it's $4.3 billion is not. We don't have a money problem.
No,
there's no question about that.
They admit
we do
that.
Not have it.
But City Councilor Anderson is saying that we have to fight over the $4.3 billion. What fight? We should have a take home to go.
I don't know. It's frustrating.
But again, Dick, your point is where are the parents? Like I said, I don't see anything in here that references they spoke to any parents and they're saying, "Wow, I think we're doing a great job with the money that we're spending. I think my child is getting a top-notch education. I think it's safe." I mean, in one incident alone last week, they took 7 guns. It's just. We don't have a gun store in the city of Boston.
You know what I would like to see, though? I see the overall budget of $4.3 billion and 1.4 for the school. But what is the school line item budget? What are they? Where's that 1.4 going in the school?
Great question. So you ask good questions that parents should be asking.
That's what I would ask.
This is why we need an elected school committee.
Yeah.
At least you can hire them, you can fire them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because it appears to me that that they're saying, okay, we got this money, and I would probably surmise that a large part of it is going towards personnel costs. That's typical, in city governments. But where? Let
me just stop you there, my brother.
Okay,
because they have shrunk. They're closing schools like nobody's business. There are fewer schools. There are less teachers. So there is cost. Don't get me wrong. But we have less people in these buildings and less students in these buildings and less buildings.
Yeah, but you also have this consumer, for lack of a better term, hovering out there we call charter school. that's pulling from that 1 point something billion
and profiting
and profiting from it. So, and when they take a child, they take the money and they send the child back. The money resides, stays there.
That's right.
You know, so that's a part of the budget. So I'm trying to looking at, okay, what is the line item budget for the school department, and where's the money going? Because and when I was looking at when I look at that budget, okay, what are the operational? How much that money is going towards operation?
Great point there, because let me give you something that is mind-boggling to most people. Close to $100 million just on the buses alone, which most of the time you see are half empty, if not a third full. Right, so
we got 100 million
just on buses.
Okay, so now we're down from 1.3 to 1.2.
Right.
Okay, so where's that 1.2?
But just let's unpack that for 1 second. And we got to run. Is that the 100 million? It would probably be cheaper to buy those parents, because here's the other thing: only children up to the 7th grade are eligible for a bus unless they have a special need. So we're not even, this isn't for all students.
Yeah.
And then the other ones get a T-Pass that we pay for. So that's just the buses alone.
Okay, but my head, and we can leave after this, my head is this. So why can't a piece of that 1.2 billion go towards hiring resources to help parents who may not have the necessary academic acumen or academic?
That's why I said that should be
actually.
I agree.
You
that
know,
should be
help,
included in
help
here.
students.
You
who
can't help someone if you can't help yourself.
Exactly.
All right, Dickie, you got the final word. We got before we go to break.
It's just single parents and parents got what they deserve by voting